We're going to build on this in school, so please take notes and copy down all the examples that you see. Our first example is x minus 12 equals negative 18. What I'm going to ask you to do for every single one of these problems is think about undoing whatever is happening to the variable. So we're undoing things. In this case, what's happening to the variable is it's being subtracted by 12. To undo that, you are going to add 12 to the number on the other side of the equation. Adding 12 is the inverse of subtracting 12. When you get an answer, you're done. Negative 6 is your answer. You write down x equals negative 6, and to check it, you would put it back into the equation. Does negative 6 minus 12 equal negative 18? If you do your calculations right, you will agree that it does. Good job. Now let's move on to a slightly different problem. This would be 5 minus y equals 7. Here I'm going to ask you to be careful. There's a tendency for students to want to add 5 to both sides because they see this minus sign. The minus sign really relates to the y and not the 5. What you have here is, even though it's not written, a little invisible positive sign in front of the 5. When it's just 5, you know it's positive. To undo a positive 5, you need to subtract 5. The answer there is going to be 7 minus 5, which is 2. However, the negative is still with the y. Now we have negative y equals 2. If negative y equals 2, logically I think we all know that y has to equal negative 2. Think about that for a minute and replay it if you need to. But if negative y equals 2, y then has to equal negative 2. Substitute that back into your equation. Does 5 minus a negative 2 equal 7? We know that two negatives together make a positive, and again, our answer works. Let's go to the next page and try a couple more examples. These are all one-step equations. Let's do negative 9 and equals 3. I threw this one in there because I know what the common mistake is going to be. Remember, we want to get the n by itself. We need to undo what's happening to the n. So look at your n. We can see that it's getting multiplied by negative 9. The opposite of that is to divide by negative 9. 3 divided by negative 9 is the right answer, but it's not in lowest terms. So we should reduce that to negative 1/3. Substitute that back in. Does negative 9 times negative 1/3 equal 3? We can see that a negative times a negative does equal a positive, so that's good. And 1/3 times 9 equals 3. We're done. Another type of problem you can have is, and I know this is everybody's favorite, fractions. You still do the same thing. We can have an example like 3/5 of b equals negative 45. We know that the inverse of addition is subtraction, the inverse of subtraction is addition, the inverse of multiplication is division, and the inverse of division is multiplication. The inverse of fractions is simply to multiply by the reciprocal. So we see this 3/5. The reciprocal, remember, means flipping it, just flipping it upside down. So we are going to multiply the 45 by 5/3. If we draw 1 under our 45, we can multiply straight across, but I would choose to reduce first. 45 is divisible by 3. Dividing these both by 3, we get 1 and 15. We still have our negative, so don't lose that. Now we just multiply straight across. Negative 15 times 5 is negative 75. And 1 times 1 is 1, which I could write, but I don't have to, so let's consider it a little invisible 1. Now let's stick that back into our original equation of 3/5 times negative 75 over 1. Does it equal negative 45? If we reduce, and when we check this out, we can reduce it. See that these are both divisible by 5. This is 15, that's 1. It works, and again, everybody's happy. Okay, let's go to a couple more examples. I'm going to make this a little more complex. Let's go to solving two-step equations right now. These are two steps. And before we start, I want you to write in your notes the order of operation, or PEMDAS, because this is going to be important when we solve two-step equations. Mainly what I want you to think about is undoing PEMDAS. And to do that, you start at the bottom and work backwards. Our first example is going to be 3n minus 7 equals negative 25. According to the order of operations, or the reverse order of operations, let's reverse this, remember, you're going to start with addition and subtraction. Aha! I see some subtraction right here. So we're going to start with our answer, and we are going to undo that negative 7. The opposite of subtracting 7 is adding 7. So go ahead and do that. Negative 25 plus 7 is negative 18. Now, we are left with this 3n. The opposite of 3 times n would be division. So we would divide by 3, and our answer would be negative 6. When you get that, sub it back in. 3 times negative 6 minus 7. We're going to get negative 18 minus 7 equals negative 25, and it checks. Let's do another example like that is just a little bit different. I'm going to scroll down my page. It's not letting me scroll down. Let's see if I can go to the next page. And again, we're still solving two-step equations. This one is interesting. There's a couple of approaches you can take with it. For negative 3, quantity x minus 5 in parentheses equals negative 27. The other day in class, we spoke briefly about the distributive property, which you can do. You can multiply your negative 3 by everything in the parentheses. You'd get negative 3x plus 5. Remember that positive 5 is from a positive 15. Excuse me, it's a positive 15. Negative 3 times negative 5 is going to be a positive 15 equals negative 27. And now you'd first undo your add 15, which would be minus 15. And that's going to give you minus 42. And divide by negative 3, which is the opposite of multiplying by negative 3. And that is going to give you 14. You can check this. Negative 3 times 14 plus 15. And see what you get. You're going to get negative 42 plus 15. That's going to equal negative 27. And everybody's happy once again. I'm going to give you a slightly shorter way of tackling that one. Let's start with, again, the negative 27. But what I'm going to ask you to do is, following the order of operations, I want you to do your parentheses last. So hold this until the end. Let's take care of this first. What's the opposite of multiplying by negative 3? Dividing by negative 3. So let's just divide our negative 27 by negative 3 straight up, and we get 9. Now we have left to deal with this negative 5. The opposite of subtracting 5 is adding 5, and we can get 14 just like that. I prefer this method here because it keeps my numbers lower, but either one will work. This one seems to save you a few steps, but whatever works for you is fine. Practice a couple more of these at home. What I'd like you to try is minus 12n equals 4. Give yourself some space in your notebook to try it. X minus 1.3 equals 5.7. And finally, a two-stepper, 5y minus 6 equals 59. I'll see you in class. Come with any questions and be prepared to push these to another level. Thank you.